The Biden administration is attempting to dramatically speed up the EV adoption rate in the United States, proposing strict new pollution limits requiring up to 2/3 of new vehicles sold to be electric by just 2032. That is roughly 10 times today's rate. Is this actually attainable, though? Mike Ramsey is a vice president and analyst at Gartner, and Greg Migliore is the editor-in-chief at Autoblog. Great to see you both. These are eye-popping numbers, gentlemen. Are they at all realistic? Let's start with you, Mike.
Well, it's going to be difficult. Everything is possible, but even setting regulations, air pollution regulations, is a difficult way to do it. If you've seen other countries that have been more successful in transitioning, they have much bigger carrots and sticks. And I'm not really sure, based on these regulations, that we can transition there that quickly. And then there's a second question, especially coming after your previous guest, that relates to the availability of key minerals and materials and manufacturing capacity to build that many electric vehicles. Certainly can be done. It's going to be a challenge. That doesn't even speak to the market. And Greg probably could speak to that as well, about how many people really want electric vehicles. It would be a difficult thing for us to transition to 2/3 by then.
You laid out a lot of factors I want to dive into, Mike, but Greg, let's start with you. And to his point, is this the right method, and is it realistic?
Realistically, this could be a challenge. It's a pretty short turnaround, if you will. If you think back to how the U.S. car market was just 9-10 years ago, 2013, 2014, things haven't changed all that much. So to see us on a path to electrification that quickly, I think it's ambitious, but I also think it's meant to be ambitious. I think the Biden administration looks at this as perhaps part of its legacy. Biden is a noted car guy, and I think he would like this to be part of sort of his achievements, when all is said and done.
Mike, what do you think the biggest challenge is between where we are now and getting to that goal, which, to your point earlier, there are several. What's the biggest?
I think the biggest challenge is actually a combination of geopolitics, supply chain issues, and availability of materials. So the car companies can make the cars. They're already on a path to produce many more electric vehicles. And I think that consumers will transition if the electric charging infrastructure is built up. But if we do not have access and cannot refine, if we do not access to key minerals like graphite and permanent metal or permanent magnet motors that require materials that are primarily locked down by China, and if we don't have access to cobalt and other materials that are key in battery development, a lot of that is locked up by China right now, refined in China. If we don't have it, there's just no way we can produce enough batteries to meet those goals. It's just not even possible.
Yeah, I was recently at the New York International Auto Show, Greg, and just about everyone I talked to said the charging capacity is nowhere near what we need to accomplish in numbers even close to this. What do you think the signature challenge is, if there's one?
No, I think it's infrastructure. I think automakers actually can get there fairly quickly. They have the technology. They even have the facilities. They could convert them to make electric cars and other forms of alternative propulsion. It really is the infrastructure. How can you make this available everywhere from New York City to Seattle to, the middle of, say, Iowa or something? Because electric cars have to be able to go everywhere. If I were looking for a business proposition about a way to, just a new area, like a new frontier, charging is like the great unknown. There's a lot of companies, but right now, none of them really have the scale to serve, the broader public. So I think that will be the single biggest challenge.
The power grid is something we don't have time to dive into, another massive issue for the federal government. But at the core of it, Mike, and you alluded to this, is there enough demand to get anywhere near that? We're at 5.8% last year.
Yeah, it's growing. It's actually interesting. I guess maybe I'm more cynical than the people who are buying, but the rate of growth the last several years of EV sales has been pretty good, and we're up. So far in the early part of this year, we're up around 8% of new vehicle sales. But still, compared to the growth rate that we'd have to sustain every single year to get to 2/3 would be very substantial. And the demand is going to be somewhat limited by exactly what Greg was talking about. And until there is really widespread availability of fast charging, not just plugs, but plugs that can recharge your vehicle in 15 minutes or mostly recharge it in 15 minutes, I think that there's a big hunk of people who will never transition until that is widely available and the range of the vehicles is really long. And then we didn't even talk about the commercial vehicle side, the larger vehicles. Those are a lot harder to transition. You know, the popular vehicle in the United States is a full-size SUV. You know, that's a difficult vehicle to make electric and keep under $100,000.
Yeah, the price point is a whole other issue. There's about a $12,000 gap on average between EVs and gas. And Greg, when we finish with you, how fast is demand growing for EVs? Where do you think it can get to by the end of the year in terms of market share?
I could see it growing a little bit. You know, nothing is particularly changing this year. It's going to be more like a longer play, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. We need some like fundamental changes in the, you know, the pricing and the infrastructure to kind of make that sea change where consumers are just, they're snapping these things up. I mean, right now we're still in the relatively early adoption phases. Like I like electric cars. They're fun to drive. They're interesting. But I also, you know, have charging infrastructure near me. That's not for everybody right now. So, you know, we'll see.
Yeah, outside of LA, there's really no charging capacity. I've never driven an EV. I could do this for a half an hour. Let's come back and do it again. Mike Ramsey, Greg Migliore, really appreciate you both. Thank you.